Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Tina Jha, you're watching Perspective. On the show today, the spotlight is on the highly productive and deeply symbolic state visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Israel from the 25th to 26th of February at the invitation of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. At a time of shifting geopolitical currents in West Asia, this visit went beyond the optics. There was visible camaraderie between the two leaders. But more importantly, the relationship itself has been elevated from a strategic partnership to a special strategic partnership for peace, innovation and prosperity. Another defining moment was the Prime Minister's address to the Knesset, the first ever by an Indian Prime Minister, where he was also conferred the Speaker's Medal. Both Prime Ministers reviewed the entire gamut of bilateral cooperation and signed more than a dozen MoUs and agreements. Among the key announcements, the Joint Committee on Science and Technology elevated to the ministerial level, a new initiative on critical and emerging technologies led by the National Security Advisors. Also, a financial dialogue mechanism is to be established. A tech gateway initiative has been announced. 20 joint fellowships in agricultural research and enhanced funding for joint research calls. Also, a quota of up to 50,000 Indian workers over the period of next 5 years. An India-Israel Academic Cooperation Forum and an India-Israel Parliamentary Friendship Group. So what does this elevation truly signify? What are the tangible gains in strategic, technological and economic terms for India as well as for Israel? To talk about some of these aspects and more, we are joined by two distinguished guests, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, former diplomat, and Professor Anshu Joshi, Professor of International Relations from the School of International Studies at JNU. Thank you to both my guests for joining in for this very, very important conversation on the highly productive visit of the Prime Minister to Israel. Let's start with the elevation in ties, Ambassador. The relationship has now been elevated to a special strategic partnership for peace, innovation and prosperity. In diplomatic terms, if you could help us understand, what does this elevation actually change on the ground as far as the India-Israel partnership is concerned?
Well, first of all, Tina, thanks for having me on your show. You know, Prime Minister Modi's visit to Israel was highly successful. It was not just a high-profile visit, but it exhibited the warmth not just between the two leaders, but also which the Prime Minister shares with other Israeli leaders and even with the Israeli people. You referred to his address in the Israeli Knesset. Now, there were chants of Modi, Modi, Modi all along, and that shows the popularity which he has amidst the parliamentarians and indeed in the country at large. Now, India's strategic partnership with Israel was elevated during Prime Minister's visit to a special strategic partnership for peace, innovation and prosperity. Now, this is a critical component of India's foreign policy and is vital for coping with a changing global order. Right. Now, this partnership is intended to help India to navigate a shifting global order characterized by geopolitical volatility, technological disruption, and security challenges. There are many key areas of cooperation which are vital for India. First and foremost is defense and security cooperation, which is indeed the cornerstone of the alliance. Israel is a top supplier of advanced weapon systems, including unmanned aerial vehicles, surveillance technology, radars, and missile systems like the Barak 8. Right. Now, these are vital for strengthening India's military, especially against conventional threats. And the partnership has shifted from a buyer-seller relationship to joint development and production of military hardware, enhancing India's domestic defense manufacturing capabilities in keeping with the Atmanirbhar Bharat objectives. Now, recent reports indicate that Israel has signaled a willingness to share its most advanced missile defense technologies, including the Iron Dome and the next generation laser-based Iron Beam, only with India. India is particularly interested in the Iron Beam that can intercept threats like drones and mortars at a reported cost of just $2 per shot, solving the cost exchange ratio problem of expensive interceptor missiles. Now, because the US has heavily funded these systems and, in fact, co-produced them, any full technology transfer would likely require explicit approval from the United States. Thus, there could be some hurdles in this regard which have to be overcome. But nonetheless, there is significant progress, I understand, which has taken place during Prime Minister's visit in regard to these particular very, very important items. Then, let me move on. A second important area is intelligence and counter-terrorism. Robust cooperation in this area, particularly on border security, intelligence sharing, and tackling radicalization, helps India manage threats from non-state actors. A third area of cooperation is technology and innovation. Okay. Collaboration in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, semiconductors, quantum computing, and space exploration support India's technological transformation. The India-Israel Industrial R&D Innovation Fund fosters joint research and development on dual-use technologies. Let me also mention that the establishment of an India-Israel Center of Excellence in Cybersecurity in India enhances India's ability to protect its critical infrastructure. Yet another important aspect, which is the last one, is geopolitical balancing. In this regard, the I2U2 grouping and the IMEC corridor are very significant.
Absolutely.
India leverages the I2U2 grouping, which also includes Israel, UAE, and USA, to build economic and technological bridges in West Asia, serving as a stabilizing, non-aligned power in a multipolar world. Now, likewise, cooperation on the India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor is intended to enhance regional connectivity. Let me also just conclude by mentioning that the partnership with Israel also provides vital economic and developmental strategy and synergy in this context. Negotiations are underway for a free trade agreement and the integration of India's unified payments interface with Israeli payment systems. The Indo-Israel agricultural product includes over 35 operational centers of excellence, which is indeed remarkable, and which train more than 1 million Indian farmers in advanced water management, drip irrigation, and agricultural techniques. Labor mobility is very important, which you referred to. Now, a 2023 agreement allows Indian workers to be employed in Israel, particularly in the construction and caregiving sectors, with about 50,000 workers anticipated over the next 5 years. So for all these reasons, the India-Israel special strategic partnership is very important for India in a changing global order.
That's right, Ambassador. You've comprehensively covered almost everything that's been covered in the joint statement that was released following that visit. A little while ago, we were watching visuals of the Prime Minister's address to the Knesset, and that has been a defining moment, especially given the response that it also generated, the manner in which we saw the Israeli lawmakers lining up for getting selfies clicked with our Prime Minister. Professor Joshi, following that, the Speaker's Medal has also been given to the Prime Minister. All of this carries a lot of symbolic weight. From an international relations perspective, how important are these gestures in diplomacy, and especially in a region which is geopolitically fragmented and wherein India has been for decades trying to balance its position?
Tina, first and foremost, thank you for having me on your show. And very relevant question. It was indeed a glorious moment for all of us being Indians, as in when we see our Prime Minister speaking in different parliaments with an array of topics and different areas of cooperation wherein we shake our hands with the like-minded nations. And through that, we are not only spreading the philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam across the globe, amid this geopolitical flux that we observe in present international relations or in the world of global politics. It also shows India's commitments towards positive diplomacy and securing its national interests while also promoting the agenda of Global South. So our Prime Minister visited Israel this week, and it was his second trip to the nation following the historic visit in 2017, when it was for the first time any Indian Prime Minister had traveled to Israel. And the official agenda also emphasized a review of significant progress that both the nations have made in the strategic partnership that we already announced between India and Israel. And now it was elevated to a special comprehensive strategic partnership ranging across peace, innovation, and prosperity. So there are different topics, including science and technology, defense and security, innovation, AI, agriculture, water management, trade, and counter-terrorism initiatives, and of course exchange among people from both the nations. So when our PM addressed Knesset, which was historic, it is notable, as again for the first time any Indian leader addressed the Israeli parliament for the first time, and he was also awarded the highest honor by the Knesset. So when he spoke, considering the situation that Israel is facing in West Asia, he covered a broad range of topics ranging from AI to soft power to people-to-people contacts, the civilizational connect that India and Israel have, counter-terrorism initiatives that both the nations are trying to boost, and of course different areas of partnership including trade, defense and security, agriculture, and so on. So Tina, we also should understand that by doing so, it also reflects a very strong commitment of upcoming partnership or the roadmap of partnership for the two countries. It is when we are enhancing the cooperation with Israel in strategic domains while also carefully managing our communication with other nations of the region, especially the Arab nations, by advocating the two-state solution. So we should not forget that when we look at the futile situation and in the region and the current conflict between Hamas and Israel, India very carefully acknowledges Palestine as a nation. However, it should be Hamas-free Palestine. And on the other hand, India also promotes its strategic partnership, acknowledges it and respects it with a context of Israel. So indeed, it is...
I'm glad you brought out that aspect, Professor, because this has been the lens through which the Prime Minister's state visit to Israel was being viewed. Also in terms of India-Israel relationship having evolved, this is one aspect that is often discussed, that India has historically, for years, for decades in fact, tried to balance its relations between Israel and the Arab world. Ambassador, are we now in a position, and through this visit of the Prime Minister to Israel, have we given out a message to every naysayer that India has now matured into a position wherein we can engage with different countries in the region, can have separate relationship with each country on our own terms?
Well, indeed, India has been very consistently sending out a message of strategic autonomy and of the fact that it has a policy of multi-alignment. And India can, in fact, align itself with, in fact, opponents. Now, in this particular context, the Middle East region is witnessing intense tensions, and the conflicts don't seem to be really coming to an end. Now, Prime Minister Modi has been very careful in dehyphenating India's relationship with Israel with that of Palestine. So, while he visited Israel this time, he did not visit Palestine. Now, let me also mention that we have been consistent in criticizing terrorism, regardless of where it originates from. And that is why our Prime Minister has consistently spoken out against the attack on October 7th, which took place some years ago, and which really targeted civilians. It was a terrorist attack. And Israel retaliated very strongly, and as a result, war is still going on. So the Prime Minister has been very consistent in pointing out that terrorism doesn't solve any problems. In fact, he has been very, very vocal in criticizing that particular terrorist attack and other terrorist attacks which take place anywhere in the world. At the same time, the Prime Minister has also been consistent in pointing out that the Palestinians deserve a state of their own. And in fact, when he met the Israeli president some years ago in Dubai at the climate conference, he told him in very clear terms that the only way to resolve this Palestinian crisis is through a two-state solution. So we have followed a policy of being very consistent in regard to calling out things and being very clear that we will be multi-aligned. At the same time, we will strengthen our relationships with different partners. Now, let me also mention that Prime Minister Netanyahu viewed our Prime Minister's visit as an opportunity to shape a strategic regional alignment. And Netanyahu described it as a hexagon of alliances. And he said this would involve, apart from Israel and India, Greece and Cyprus, and also some Asian and African countries. Now, clearly, that would come in the way of India's strategic autonomy, because India has not been a part of any military alliance. We have been members, we are members of various economic cooperation organizations, the SCO, BRICS, SAARC, BIMSTEC, even the G20. And although there have been voices which have tried to term Quad as a military alliance, India has been very consistent in saying that Quad is a security dialogue. It is not a military alliance. So Netanyahu's suggestion for a strategic regional alignment, which he calls the hexagon of alignment, is something which is not really in sync with our global policy. And I don't think that India will be proceeding with the idea of becoming a member of this hexagon of alliances, because as you were yourself mentioning, we have a policy of strategic autonomy, and tying ourselves down in a particular alliance like the hexagon of alliance would take away our freedom to be strategically autonomous.
Absolutely. So while that messaging has been clear, what we've also tried to keep the focus on is our deepening partnership with Israel, and especially looking at the sheer breadth of the agreements that have been signed, Professor Joshi, from AI and cybersecurity to agriculture to labor mobility to also cultural exchanges. Is this the most comprehensive sort of engagement that we are having now with Israel? Earlier, we had a very heavy sort of a defense and strategic partnership. Now it spans across to different areas. But most importantly, what will determine that all of this translates into tangible outcomes in taking our ties one notch higher?
Right, Tina, and we must understand that after 2017, when this time our Prime Minister visited Israel, it actually tries to reinforce a trend. And it is very apparent now, while reflecting our capacities, our capabilities to navigate the complexities of real politics and our own domestic political considerations. So from a win-win situations point, during this visit, we could see India and Israel identifying and signing different initiatives, agreements in the areas of artificial intelligence and quantum technology, cybersecurity, agriculture innovation, water management, and FTA is also on the card. And apart from that, our conventional area, which is related to defense and security. So the discussions, the agreements encompass advanced missile defense cooperation, potential incorporation of Israeli systems such as Iron Dome mechanism, which is a part of its multi-layered air defense system, comprises Iron Dome, David Sling, and Arrow 1 and Arrow 2. Which are considered as one of the best in the world. and Israel is ready to give this system to India. And along with that, we have also spoken about sophisticated platforms to get for ourselves to ensure long-term security framework of ours, contingent upon technology transfer negotiations also was there. And then Israel is also regarded as a crucial hub in, India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, which is IMEC. And this seeks to connect Indian ports to Europe through West Asia. And that's where Israel plays a pivotal role. So thereby, it imparts a geo-economic aspect also to this visit and the agreements that we have signed. And this extends beyond bilateral relations and reaches to a comprehensive special strategic partnership, of course. And for Israel also, this closer relationship with India can be considered as a significant relationship with a global South democracy, a global South power, which provides diplomatic validation and economic prospects to Israel at a time when there is increasing criticism from Western world for Israel. So that's where India can be seen as a balancer. So all in all the agreements and diplomatically also, Tina, we can see that this is a win-win situation for both the nations.
Absolutely. I think in so many ways, beyond agreements and MoUs, if this visit is analyzed, it is quite telling about the evolution of India's foreign policy confidence, the manner in which we are symbolically giving out messages across to different parts of the world. But Ambassador, is it also a reaffirmation of sorts that we are taking our Indian foreign policy to a level where we are not just governed by history, governed by our ideology, but more importantly governed by the future, which lies on innovation, which lies on resilience, and which lies on shared interests, keeping the interest of the country paramount?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And this was very evident during the recent AI Impact Summit that India organized, and which was attended by so many heads of states and heads of government, and also ministers and leaders of trade and industry, as also very important players in the artificial intelligence area. So this underlines the fact that India is looking ahead and has an eye on important factors which shape events. And that is why, even in our interaction with other countries, including, for instance, the United States or Israel, which are big players in the high-tech area, we have tried to focus on the gains from bilateral cooperation. In fact, India's relationship with the United States in the high-tech area is being strengthened immensely because of the high-tech partnership. Then, of course, during Prime Minister's visit to Israel, it was very evident that both sides were emphasizing the importance of high-tech in their bilateral relationship. And that is why a very important event was organized, which Prime Minister Modi attended along with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the emphasis was on strengthening the areas of cooperation in which both are big players. There has to be a certain amount of give and take, and that was the messaging. Let me also mention that India's strength is being recognized all over the world because it is a very strong emerging economy, and because it is a major global player in emerging technology. Nobody would take us seriously if we were not of consequence. It is because India is a very consequential player in all these areas that our role is being recognized and countries are reaching out to us. Let me also mention that in this regard, our Prime Minister has really taken the lead. He focuses on high-tech and other important areas during his interactions with other leaders, and he leads from the front. So all these factors are making India a very important and consequential global player.
And that's what we've seen through this visit, state visit of the Prime Minister to Israel.
Yes.
A short one, but highly significant in terms of the outcomes.
Yes.
But most importantly, in terms of the messaging that India today, in terms of its foreign policy, is confident, is calibrated, and most importantly, governed by its own interests. So we are not, we are strengthening our ties with countries, but not narrowing down on the options that are available to us. I think that's been the biggest messaging, and that's what has been beautifully expressed by both our panelists. Time allows us to take up only that much of the program. Thank you, Ambassador and Professor, for joining in, sharing your insightful views with us and our viewers. Always a pleasure hearing you. And to you viewers, thank you very much for your time as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.